Since we're all early birds this morning, why don't we get started? My name is Karen Tucker. I'm CEO at the Churchill Club. Welcome. I also like to extend a very warm welcome to our speakers this morning. We have Arna, Ionescu, we have Luke Julia, we have Rob Coneybeer, and our moderator on the end, Craig McNeil. Thank you very much for being here as well. This morning our program is about massive sensors and data. The genesis of the program was a prediction that was made on the Churchill Club stage last year at the 14th annual Top 10 Tech Trends event, that massive sensors and data would be one of the non-obvious then, yet explosive trends in about 5 years' time. And so the purpose of this discussion is to drill down on that and talk about what's real and where are the exciting opportunities, et cetera. Next week, we will be presenting the 15th annual Top 10 Trends event. So expect that there will be more to drill down on after that. Would especially like to thank Accenture for opening your doors to us this morning in this gorgeous technology lab here in San Jose. Thank you so much. Join me in thanking them. A brief introduction for our new guests in the audience. Churchill Club, since 1985, has been convening Silicon Valley-style conversations where like minds can connect with ideas and with one another. Our mission, which drives us in our decisions every day, is to encourage innovation, economic growth, and societal benefit. We're presenting up to 40 programs each year, ranging from breakfast programs like this one to very large programs, which we call Premier. We are a member-supported nonprofit, and if you are interested in joining us, we would welcome you to do so. We have a great set of programs coming up. I mentioned the one already next week. After that, leading CMOs on myths and realities of customer analytics on June 4. We have a venture capital roundtable on June 6, and digital disruption with the leaders of Airbnb, Uber, Expensify, and Pebble on June 12. These are just some of the programs coming up, so be sure and keep an eye on us by either checking in on the website or getting on our mailing list. If you're tweeting, please use the hashtag Churchill Club, and you'll see other Twitter codes in your printed programs. Our moderator, Craig McNeil, is the North America lead for Accenture Mobility. He has finely honed abilities and instincts in his areas of passion, especially emerging technologies and innovations. Craig has a diverse background, having been a CTO and a CEO previously. He clearly has diverse interests, having studied neuroscience and telecommunications academically. We look forward to the conversation that Craig will lead for us this morning. Please give a warm welcome to Craig McNeil.
Great, thank you, Karen. I've got, well, first of all, I wanted to also welcome you guys. Thank you guys for coming to our topic on massive sensors and data this morning. As Karen mentioned, my name is Craig McNeil. I lead up Accenture's North American mobility practice. I'm joined here by three panelists. We've got Rob Coneybeer with Shasta Ventures. We've got Luke Julia with Samsung Electronics, and we've got Arna Ionescu. Did I get it right? Okay, we practiced that. From Proteus Digital Health. And I think this panel's got a great bit of background to give us some really good, show some experiences that they've had and give perspective on this topic. So I'm going to have them introduce themselves and go into a little background in terms of where they sit in the ecosystem and what they're seeing in just a second. But I thought I'd share two observations that I've witnessed over the last couple of weeks, just to kind of set the stage for this context of massive sensors and data. So the first one, and this is more of a consumer focus, was this past Saturday. I was at the Apple store. I was buying a Mother's Day gift. And as is the case every time I walk into an Apple store or a Best Buy, I find myself wandering around, looking at all the latest, technical gadgets and all the wireless connected devices. And as I was looking at the, a couple of the devices, I kind of took a step back and I looked at the shelf and I thought, the reality is about 90% of these accessories that they're claiming are app-centric devices are really sensors of some sort. And I think that really plays into to the topic today. And if I think back to just a couple years ago, when you'd walk into the same section of the Apple Store, literally there was, maybe a couple cutting-edge heart rate monitors, and I remember this wireless dog collar that you could track your pet if they went astray. And fast forward to today, or at least on Saturday, and that same shelf space, is about 2 6-foot wide, floor-to-ceiling, shelves, just packed with, sensor data or sensor devices. And I think it really shows, how far the industry has come in just 2 years. And this is just on the consumer side. And I thought it was interesting. I wrote down a few of the sensors or the devices that were there because I thought there was some good diversity there, and I thought you might be interested in this. But there were probably maybe 4 to 5 competing pedometers. I'm not sure if anybody wears one of these. I wear the Jawbone Up. There's the Nike Fuel Band and a Fitbit and a few others out there. But those were prevalent in the store. There were proximity and movement alarms. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but this is the latest thing that you attach this small device to your keychain, or you put it in your wallet, and if that moves a certain distance from your phone, an alarm goes off. So I thought that was pretty interesting, and it looks like there's a lot of competition in that space now. But in addition to those types of sensors, there were heart rate monitors, there were blood pressure cuffs, there were scales that you weigh yourself and it gets your body mass and other data and sends it to the cloud immediately. There was even a barbecue thermometer to help you prevent burning your steak when you're multitasking. And there was even a plant moisture detector to help determine when you should water your plant. So they had probably 10 other types of devices. I think I saw something in there that could even help you monitor your golf swing. And so this was just a sign of the times. I thought if this is the type of stuff that we're seeing in an Apple store today, I'm sure you can see the same stuff in a Best Buy, then we really are at the age of having sensors really meet that consumer market. My second observation, or the other observation, is more on the enterprise side. And if I look at what I see my clients doing on a daily basis, I have the fun task of assisting my clients in business and technical challenges and helping them address those with mobility solutions. And if I look at the types of solutions that are helping these clients today, it's increasingly related to this topic of massive sensors and data. And just to give a couple examples there, we're seeing automotive and industrial equipment clients use remote diagnostic data about the machinery or the engines to do preventative maintenance on their machines. And this is helping reduce downtime that's seen in the field. And that's saving hundreds of millions of dollars a year. We're seeing the same thing in the healthcare aspect. Mobile sensors, some of the things that I mentioned I saw at the Apple Store, obviously in the industrialized version, is really helping remove or extend the walls of the hospital, allowing patients to be in less expensive care centers and be tended to by less costly personnel, which is really dropping the cost of healthcare. And then although it's very early days, my last point there is, I'm starting to see a lot of companies actually start to monetize or try to monetize the data that's coming off of these sensors. And so that's a huge topic that I really want to get into with the panel today. And I think the panel is going to be able to give us a lot more examples of both what we're seeing out there today, and then we really want to dig into what's future or what's possible in the future with massive sensors and data. So Rob, if you don't mind, I'll kick it off to you, and maybe you can just give us a little bit of background on yourself, and then I'd love to hear a couple of points in terms of what you're seeing in terms of sensor or data solutions that are present today.
Sure. So I'm Rob Coneybeer. I'm a founder and managing director at Shasta Ventures. We're an early stage venture capital firm based here in the Bay Area. We focus on early stage IT, so Series A, Series B investing. We do some seed investing. We invest across different sectors, so about half of what we do is in enterprise, about the other half is in consumer. And I focus on mobile and wireless, but within that area, the area that I'm spending a lot of time and I've been looking at is the intersection of the offline world that we all live in and the online world, the internet we're all very familiar with, and how those come together. And there are two specific trends that I'm spending a lot of time looking at and we've been investing in for a while. One is, how do these devices that are packed with sensors like a smartphone impact and change big offline industries? So we've invested in Relay Rides, for example. Relay Rides is a peer-to-peer car rental service. And having sensors, having these devices, actually it fundamentally changes the economics of somebody if they wanted to rent their car out to somebody else. If you were to think of peer-to-peer car rental, it has a chance to be very disruptive to the rental industry. So that's one direction. The other direction is looking at what we call internet-powered hardware, and those are devices like Nest. And Nest is a thermostat that goes in your wall. We can talk about that type of thing later. And the world of internet-powered hardware is an area that I'm spending a lot of time looking at, and just the Internet of Things broadly defined.
Thank you.
Sure.
So I'm Luke Julia. I'm working at Samsung right now. We just opened about 6 months ago a new office in Menlo Park. That is focusing also on early technology. We are trying to find some partners to play with us in different domains, and one of them is Internet of Things or Internet of Everything. I mean, you can call it whatever you want. And so we are playing with those partners to look at their technologies. And one example that I have that is coming in mind in what we are talking about today is this company that is out in France and that is doing basically a mesh of smoke detectors. So they are working with an insurance company, very big insurance company in France, and they did put in every smoke detectors in every single home. It's now mandatory, like it is here now. They put a sensor that basically alerts the people if the smoke detector is out of power, so if the battery basically is going down, which is very useful because it can prevent a lot.
The beep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The beep is not very good, so it's an SMS actually that they receive, so it's only one beep. So this kind of technology is obviously very interesting, and I mean this is new, and this is a very good example of what Internet of Things is going to do for people. It's going to augment and to give better user experience basically to us all. So that's one of the examples.
Great, thanks, Luke.
Good morning. My name is Arna Ionescu. I'm responsible for user experience at Proteus Digital Health. So to follow a phrase that the first two panelists used here, we're putting your medicines on the Internet of Things. So Proteus is using ingestible and wearable sensors to help people be healthier each and every day, to help doctors prescribe better, and to help health systems better deliver care and figure out who needs what care. So the way it works is we have this ingestible sensor that goes inside of your medication. Today it's inside of placebo, and in the future it's going to be inside your actual pharmaceuticals. It's the world's smallest FDA-approved medical device. It is a sensor that is inside of the pills. It's about 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter square, made entirely of ingredients found in the food chain, in the human diet. And it is able to communicate with this wearable sensor, and this is our current generation. It's getting smaller every 6 months, that you are on your torso. And it's able to communicate with the sensor even though it has no battery and no antenna. So there's something like 90 patents protecting this little sensor. And a lot of the invention came into how it is that it's powered and how it is that it communicates, it transmits. So just real quick, people always find this interesting. Does everybody here remember how a potato battery worked back in grade school? 2 different metals in a potato power. So we're using the same principle in this ingestible sensor. One side essentially has magnesium, the other side has cuprous chloride. And when it hits your stomach, the fluids, basically you are the potato, and it is able to self-power for a few seconds. It's then able to communicate, we're calling it transdermally, to the patch. It's not emitting, it's not RFID, it's nothing that you can pick up outside of the body. It's essentially creating a digital heartbeat that is only able to be picked up by this patch, so nothing else. So it's an inherently safe system. And within that digital heartbeat, which we can differentiate from your natural heartbeat, we can encode information. And so we're able to capture information from inside of your body, transmit it to the skin. This patch also is essentially all of the wearable devices out there in one. So it does activity, rest, heart rate variability, respiration, stress, basically, Fitbit plus body media plus polar heart rate all in one. We never intended to build it, but when we were looking for a wearable sensor We couldn't find one that was small enough, cheap enough, and powerful enough to do what we wanted. And so we ended up building it, and a lot of companies are actually licensing the electronics module for their own sensor needs on the wearable. So that's the basic technology that Proteus has as the head of user experience there. I have to figure out how it is that we turn these widgets into something that truly engage and make a difference in people's lives. And so hopefully I'll get to talk a little bit about that during this morning's panel.
Great. Thanks, Arna. Well, so we got a couple more examples here, and I wanted to start off by kind of grounding us in terms of what's out there today. So Rob shared with us the rideshare and Nest. Luke talked about usage-based insurance. And Arna, I'm not sure how to categorize that, but vital signs, mobile pills, the whole healthcare area is certainly something that is, using this massive sensors and data well. But I wanted to quickly switch gears and go into some things around the future. So, and I'd like to open this up to everybody on the panel. Excuse me. So I'd like to get a sense of what types of industries, or maybe even cross-industry solutions, do you see significant year-over-year growth? And then maybe in those industries or those solutions, I mean, what do you see the future looking like? Open this up to anybody.
So what I think and what I claim, for a while now is that actually the future is here.
Yeah.
So one thing that when you look, at predictions that that people are doing around Internet of Things, they are talking about 2020 all the time, and we are in 2013, and it's actually right now that it's happening. And when you look at the previsions, on the number of devices, number of things that are going to be connected in this near future or now, I mean, people are saying it's going to be 100 billions, 50 billions, 80 billions, whatever. I mean, those numbers, for me, do not make sense. And I have a small, anecdote about that, which is my life. And I have a smart home that I'm playing with, for the past 13 years. And it's basically full of sensors, full of things. And when I compare my life and my home with normal human beings, I don't know that there is any normal human beings in this room because we are in the Silicon Valley, but I would take my sister as a normal human being. I mean, she is connected to two things today, right? Basically, her computer and her cell phone, okay? And I take my case with my smart home, that way I put everything is, addressable, basically. And I counted the other day, and I have something like 150 devices that are talking directly to me. Okay, so if you go from my sister to me, it's a factor of 75, and you count the devices that are connected today. 4 billion phones, 10 billion computers, whatever, so 15 billion, roughly, and you multiply that by 75. I mean, you go way over a trillion, right? So just all that to say that it's now that is happening with all the devices that you found, in the Apple Store today. I mean, it's really coming now. We are connected to more and more things. The main issue that we have today is that all those things, they are in their own silos today. So now they're not really working for us, human beings, as a whole. They are working at silos that we have to address, and to talk to with a special website, with a special, kind of thing. So the idea of the Internet of Things and what we should all work, towards is to connect all those things themselves, all those silos.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think that the future has happened quietly. I think what's happened is there's more of an awareness among consumers and end users because the consumer applications of the Internet of Things are taking off. But when you go up to your car, for example, every modern car today has thousands of sensors in it. Whether it's airbag sensor, whether it's proximity sensor when you come close to the car and you can actually open the car door, or you just push a button, even on in entry-level economy car, you can just, oh, sure. On the very top. There we go.
Got it.
All right. Oh, much better. Okay. So if you look at a car, it's baked into everything in the car. But what's happening is now with these devices that we have, these smartphones that everybody in this room carries, and I'll bet that everybody in this room, apologies to Nokia and RIM, is either Android or iPhone or the iPhone. There are remote controls that can interact with all these sensors that are around us right now. And Bluetooth Low Energy is starting to be built into, you see it in every iOS device. Before long, you'll see it in Android. And the fact that it's a short-range technology is a feature, not a bug. And it's something that has become a lot easier for people to bake in. So I think that when you ask this question of what's growth, where are the opportunities, it's been slowly building over time. And in fact, it's been rapidly building over time across the industrial and commercial and enterprise applications. But on the consumer side, you see this explosive growth because you have these remote controls that we all can easily understand and use to interact with things around us.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I agree that there have been enormous shifts in the consumer space in terms of what it is that people can do with these new networks of sensors. I think that the opportunity and where there's huge business opportunity is in that translation between kind of consumer and professional, particularly in the healthcare space. So if you think about opportunities for sensors in the healthcare space, we have a healthcare system that was essentially designed 100 years ago to treat the kinds of conditions that were prevalent 100 years ago. So in 1918, I think 3% of the world's population died of the Spanish flu. We just don't see issues like that happening anymore because we just don't have those kinds of severe acute conditions where you go to the hospital and you get fixed and you go home and you're fine. Right? The conditions that we have facing us today are chronic conditions that are essentially diseases of lifestyle, conditions that are lifestyle related. And so I think a huge opportunity is in using these sensors to bring healthcare to people into their homes, into their daily lives, and essentially out of these acute care facilities that, quite frankly, we don't have those conditions anymore at the scale that we used to have when the healthcare system was designed. And so thinking about how it is that you design a healthcare system that's really focused on consumers as opposed to a healthcare system that's focused on the professionals, I think that's a huge opportunity, and I think it's not going to happen without massive sensors in our lives each and every day nudging us along.
So Arna, am I hearing that you think that most of this would be driven by the consumer versus the enterprise or the businesses that would invest in this traditionally?
I think it depends on the industry, because I think that there are certain industries that you look at that have really good adoption of sensor systems. So, I've had the opportunity to visit a number of various manufacturing plants, for example, in different industries, and they have incredible uses of sensors to make sure that everything that's being manufactured is of the right quality. I mean, those are phenomenally interesting uses of sensors. But I think that I'm biasing my comments this morning towards healthcare because it's such a big topic. I figured I needed to have some focus on what I'm talking about. And I think that in the healthcare space, it is so hard to move the Titanic, which is our healthcare system, that it will absolutely be driven by consumers and consumers expecting a different kind of care and a different kind of relationship with their healthcare providers.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept because I think the whole concept of mobility, what we've seen with smartphones and tablets, this whole industry has been driven by a consumer drive and the consumerization of IT. And it's interesting to see how sensors play into that and how the same consumerization may make this the success that it's likely going to be. To the panel, any other particular industries? So we've mentioned healthcare, manufacturing. Are there other types of industries that we see early growth in?
Well, there's been huge change in the energy industry, for example. You take a look at that, and if you look at companies like Nest, where you have an internet-connected thermostat, there are so many interesting things that come out of that in terms of taking a look at, so for example, when you ask whether that's a big thing, whether that matters, if you look at energy usage in residential households across the US, for example, forget the rest of the world for a moment, but in the US, half of that energy usage goes through the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems in the houses. So just going after that specific problem, if by putting in a device that senses when a home is occupied, that senses automatically when people want something turned up, turned down, and using machine learning can take that data and can put together a setback schedule, you find that in a house you could save anywhere from 10 to 30% off somebody's heating or cooling bill. That's a huge impact. And that's yet another example of something that's a more consumer-driven, consumer-pulling implication, because everybody in this room would be interested in saving money and being as comfortable as they are today in their home.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I would say that there are really three things that are interesting to humans, to us. It's basically home, the car, and Earth. So that's the three things that really are affecting today the number of sensors and services and devices that we see coming out. So it's definitely there.
Okay, great. The next question I want to ask the panel is related to standards. And Rob and I talked about this a little bit before the session, but
I didn't tell you what I was going to say.
No, that's right. He didn't tell me, but I know it's going to be good. So, but let me set the stage here. So we're talking about all these massive sensors. We're talking about the reams of data that are coming off of these things, and it really starts to let you wonder. Okay, when we've had success in other technologies, whether that be the internet, whether that be short-range protocols like Bluetooth or even Wi-Fi. The success of those things really started to catapult once we had defined standards that people could leverage. And so you have OEMs, you have developer communities, you have everybody using these defined standards to really help move this thing forward. Right now, it would appear, although I want the panel to weigh in on this, it would appear that there are no standards, or that they are very nascent and early days. So my question is, what sort of standards should we be looking at? What should the industry be focused on? And maybe to go one layer deeper there, do you see any standards that would be cross-ecosystem that would involve everybody, or is this something that's going to evolve that's more of an industry vertical? So healthcare has their set of standards, energy, resources have their set of standards. Rob, I'll let you answer
Yeah,
first.
I mean, the main thing I was going to say is people like to throw around this phrase of standards, what it means, and it's all about buyer power at the end of the day. It's about buyers figuring out how can they drive down the cost of what they want to purchase. And it's that fight between people that feel that they're creating value, like Apple when they brought the iPhone to market. Yeah. And there's the idea of open standards versus closed standards. And I think either one is powerful. I think standardization is important. But there's this question of like standards bodies, et cetera. So anybody that's spent time in the networking world knows there's these fights that go on for years about how do you define the Wi-Fi standard? How do you define wide area networking standards, et cetera, and how routers interact? And it's really just a fight over value that's out there. So the standardization that matters to me as an investor is it a standard and huge platform that people can plug into and they know what the rules of the game are and they're predictable. So when the iPhone came to market, and the reason that I like to talk about that is because it was the first time you had a platform that developers could write to that was incredibly powerful, and they didn't have to talk to the carriers. They didn't have to get permission from these bureaucratic institutions that wanted to extract huge amounts of value as opposed to just saying, we'll give you distribution, we'll take 30%, but we'll give you distribution, and as long as it's safe for work, we'll allow it to go onto the platform. So I think when you think about what's going on with sensors today, I don't know that standardization matters that much from where we are right now. I mean, standardization is a two-edged sword because the more standardization you have, I think in a lot of ways that actually can make you more insecure, because if there's one breach, it happens across billions of devices, as opposed to if you have a breach, it might be one dam somewhere or one piece of medical equipment.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Luke or Arna, any thoughts on standards?
On standards, I mean, I can elaborate later, but on the fact that I think because of the number of sensors that are going to flood us, in the next few months and years, I think that we didn't find the right transportation system yet. It's not there. Nobody knows what it is going to be. I don't think, and it's only me talking here, I don't think that it's going to be Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or the carrier, the 3G and 2G of the world. I think it's something new, something different, because those sensors, 80% of them are going to be dust, basically, that are going to carry, very, very low amount of data, and they are going to need to be low energy because they are going to be forgotten somewhere, in my cellar or something, and in my bottle of wine and things like that. So I mean, it doesn't exist today. There is nothing today that allows us to have this kind of transportation, basically. I mean, there are companies that are kind of trying to push some ideas around that, and this is, we are talking about some of them, but they are far to be a standard yet, I mean, for sure. Are they going to become one? I mean, maybe, I mean, there will be, because if, you know, the numbers are the ones that I'm claiming, 80% of those, you know, those kind of thing, by default, it will become a standard, because, I mean, they will need some kind of, this kind of technology. So, today, I don't think that any of the protocol that we are using is the one that is going to win and to be the de facto standard in the next few years.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Rob made a great point that I just wanted to elaborate on a little bit with our own experience, which is this thing about, you know, a standard being a double-edged sword, both allowing you to talk to many more devices and extend your reach, but also being a security breach. So what we chose to do is, you know, the ingestible sensor, the tiny little grain of sand, that is communicating via a very proprietary closed communication method that's absolutely not a standard, and it never will be. However, we made the choice for our wearable sensor to talk to a mobile device via Bluetooth, which is standard. And just as an anecdote, it was really hard for us to make the choice about what communication mechanism to integrate within this patch, right? Like, we've had our eyes on Bluetooth Low Energy for years at this point, and it was a hard choice, because when we made the choice to put Bluetooth in this, we were basically, you know, 18 months ago, a year ago, looking at a market that had AMP and Zigbee and Bluetooth, and people were starting to talk about Bluetooth Low Energy, but there was nothing out about it yet, and there was one phone on the market, and so we knew that wasn't quite ready yet. You know, now we have decided to put Bluetooth Low Energy into our next one, but Android hasn't released their developer kit yet. So, you know, we can't even build our firmware for another, I think, 6 weeks. They're supposed to release that. And so, you know, with standards, I think that the challenge for companies is what do you pick, and how do you integrate it? Because these devices have to, essentially, the hardware has to be fixed 18 months before they come to market, pretty much. And so, you know, we need a better mechanism for standards in terms of really helping people know what it is that they should be building into their devices, and what phones will be on the market with, you know, what communication protocol 18 months from now. We definitely aren't there yet. And, you know, to Luke's point, in some ways, we need a bit of a change in how it is that this market works, so that we can help devices really get on a communication protocol that is uniform and usable across many devices.
And one quick thing I'd just jump in and say is, I actually think that there's not another protocol for transport that's gonna happen. You look at IP, Internet Protocol has been around for a long time. People talked about different things like ATM, for those of you that remember asynchronous transfer mode and these other things. There would be these great new protocols we were going to use, but there were some that were able to just move forward. So I'll come out and say, from watching this evolve over the last 10 years, Bluetooth Low Energy is going to be huge for local access to sensor data, period. And if you look at the push that Apple's putting behind it, and I'm seeing an absolute groundswell at the startup level, teams of 2 to 10 people that are looking at all the stuff that's out there. They're like, you know what? Apple's actually making this work. They've made a real commitment to it. They've changed from what they did with the Made for iPod experience, which was tightly controlled and integrated, to what they're doing with Bluetooth Low Energy. And I think that if anybody in this room is thinking about the kind of bet they want to make for connection to open platforms, that's the right bet to make. Wi-Fi will be here for a while. Wider area, those will continue to evolve. But, you know, I just would respectfully disagree that it's going to be something new.
We actually do not disagree. I mean, I totally agree with BLE. And by the way, Samsung released the BLE for Samsung, so you can use it now. But what I'm saying is that BLE is really local, right? I mean, there is a range issue. What I'm saying is that a lot of the devices that we are going to have, if I'm talking about all my trees in my garden, for instance, you know, they're not going to work with BLE, right? They're going to need to send, you know, some hygrometry sensors are going to be, you know, out of range for BLE. So what I'm saying is that there is something else that is very similar to Bluetooth Low Energy, but that is going to have a better range and a lower bandwidth. This is what I'm saying. So this is where I'm calling a new protocol, you know. I don't think that Bluetooth itself can achieve this kind of.
Yeah, and I would just say that's a feature, not an issue.
No, it's not an issue for sure.
Yeah.
Clearly, we're early days in the standardization of this topic. A related topic, and a few you mentioned this in talking about standards, is security. So this is another one I want to touch on. Again, we've got all this data coming off these devices. A lot of it is sensitive data, right? It's data about my location. It's data about real-time demographics, potentially financial data in there. And with a lack of standards, it seems like security would be a challenge there. So again, I'll open this up to the panel, but I'd love to get your thoughts on where the industry should be focused in terms of security right now. Arna, you want to?
Yeah, this is, so being from Proteus, where we basically have these sensors that are capturing all of this information about your health behaviors and your physiologic response, invariably the first question that we always get is about privacy and security. And what's interesting to me from the user experience perspective is, so me and my team are out there talking to patients and clinicians and health systems, all of the different stakeholders that use our technology. And what's interesting to me about security is that these different stakeholders think about security and think in extremely different ways. So if you talk to a technologist, the security problem is basically being able to hack and break encryption codes. If you talk to a clinician, people they're worried that their security problem is HIPAA and people getting data that they shouldn't be getting. If you talk to a patient, their security problem is that they don't want their doctor to know what they were doing at 2 in the morning in bed. And so what's really interesting to me about security is that it is such a different conversation depending on the perspective from which you're approaching it. And so I think that the way you probably meant your question was in the first way about kind of encryption and protecting the data and all of that. But what I think is very interesting is how the conversation is so different, and it should be so different depending on whom it is and who it is that you're talking about.
Yeah, no, great point. Rob or Luke?
So I think that security is obviously very, very important. I think that it's solved, quote unquote, in a lot of domains today that are going to be a lot that we are going to use. What does that mean? It means that the security on the web, the security on devices, the security on some protocols, it's fixed. It doesn't work all the time. We know that we have attacks and stuff, but bottom line, we are going to reuse a lot of that. What is very interesting in the new kind of sensors that you are creating, for instance, and the new kind of potential transportation system that are going to be there, is that when they are proprietary like yours, they are inherently secure, right? Because you are the only one who have the keys, right? So what is going to be interesting is that more and more the security is going to be at the sensor level, at the very edge level, embedded with the hardware itself. The definition of the sensor and the product is going to define its own security and its own protocol or whatever. And we hope that we'll be able to secure the systems like that. And after that, once the data is on the wild, so this is where it's already fixed.
Yeah, great. I think we've got five more minutes before QA, and then I want to take questions from the audience. But I want to ask 2 more questions. If we look at what's happening with sensors and data, we collect a bunch of data, through these often remote sensors, and then most of the time that data is being transmitted back to some place that it can be analyzed through a wireless network. And I would say, actually, I don't know what that is. Some of that's probably through private network, but a lot of that, especially today, and what we're seeing in the telematics solutions out there, is going through a wide area network, and it's often one of the carriers' networks. So I'm going to direct this question to Rob, given Rob's background here. Luke and Arna, feel free to chime in as well, but I'd love to get a sense for where the mobile network operators fit into this whole thing.
Yeah, I have a very strong point of view about this, which is they should be the best bit pipes in the world. And it's really interesting. People may remember 3-4 years ago when AT&T did the initial deal with Apple to carry the iPhone. And there were some people that said this is genius, and there were a lot of people that said this is insane. This is crazy. They've done a deal with the devil. When you take a look at how things have unfolded over time, people forget about that, and all they look at is record profits for AT&T and Verizon. You see these numbers, and basically it's worked out for them really well. It's worked out for them incredibly well that they've given up the deck, they've given up the user experience pieces, and they focus on, when carriers focus on the piece of user experience that everybody in this room likes to complain about, like drop calls on Interstate 280, or like to talk about getting bits better, faster, leave the higher layer stuff and the protocol stack to the people that are the application providers and being the best bit pipe. And I think also everybody in this room would say that Verizon has a reputation relative to the other carriers for coverage. You can actually differentiate based on coverage and capability, and it's something consumers can see and focus on that. I think there's a huge opportunity there for carriers to differentiate around that, but accepting that, and that's part of the reason that you haven't seen the growth in machine to machine, is that anybody that wants to build something to communicate over the wide area has to pay an exorbitant price to get on the network, even if all they want to do with the network is have vending machines that say, hey, we're out of soda on these, these machines.
Yeah. Luke or Arna?
I agree that there is this big problem, for the people that are doing M2M. And that's why also, again, I believe that there is an opportunity for something else than just what the carriers, are providing today.
Yeah. Okay, well, last question from me, and I try to save the most interesting one for the end. But we've been talking about sensors collecting data, data going back somewhat to a cloud, being analyzed, and then intelligence being determined from that data, actionable information being taken from that data. And so, as a person that's not in a venture capital firm or using $1 billion of Samsung's money to invest, it strikes me as a great opportunity for new business models. So I'd love to hear from the panel, what types of business models are likely to succeed, and what do we even see happening?
So I think a lot of it depends. I think if you're looking at enterprise, the business models are going to be around consulting, Accenture, because it tends to be very fragmented applications. There's huge applications. You talk about GE dedicating billions and billions of dollars to the industrial internet, but they're going to own that value. I think that's a tough startup place, and I think tailoring and building those solutions is going to be big. I think if you look more in the consumer world that we all see, it will be around hardware sales. If you look at different companies that are building and shipping things today in consumer hardware, they actually see margin on every product that they ship, and the software helps support those hardware sales. You look at Apple, for example, the vast majority of Apple's revenue is still from hardware sales and upgrade cycles that people go through. Where I think it's going and where I think there's huge value to be had is the program is about sensors and data, but it's about actuators, it's about taking action, it's about closing the loop. And the more that you start to incorporate machine learning and AI and these algorithms that we've thought about for years, and these tools start to be able to things that can repair themselves and to take action, like a thermostat that turns down the heat when it's figured out that you're away, those are the types of things that will start to generate tremendous value, and they'll lead to business models that we don't see yet today. But I think it's around that you'll see something beyond the initial hardware sale or consulting installation sale.
Yeah.
Good.
I think that's very well said. I think that there's huge opportunity for innovation around the business models, because when you have these massive number of sensors, it's not the hardware and it's not the widget that you're going to want to sell. It's the information. And so how it is that you create business models around the information and around the value you're getting for the information, I bet the margins there are going to be a lot harder than the value, the margins you can get off of hardware alone. For example, at Proteus, we don't sell our technology. We don't sell our sensors. We have our consumers are, right now we have a consumer pay product in the UK. They're paying a monthly subscription fee for access to the information, and we give them whatever sensors they need to generate that information. And so the technology is all in the background, and what's in the foreground is the value. And I think really thinking about that and the information and the services that you can deliver as a result of the information is where the new business models are going to come out.
I just wanted to echo the exact same thing. I mean, it's going to be all about data massaging, basically, so machine learning or analytics or whatever it is, and the services that are going to be around that. And hopefully, in the platforms that we are going to be able to provide to people in the next few months, I mean, there will be space for services to be plugged in these platforms, and this is where the value is going to be for the person that are going to provide those services.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Luke. Okay, it's hard for me to see back there with the light, but I wanted to take questions from the audience. So just speak up. Okay, I can't see that far. Put my glasses back on.
Hi, Dave Nelson-Gal, Baiacu. So the one challenge I think you have with the, well, actually there's a point here. One is, what we're arguing about is the last meter, not the last mile in terms of networking. And you've done a brilliant job of coming up with an application-specific way of getting to the network, right, with your Proteus device, right? And that, you can't standardize on that. You have to think about the vertical solution. So I think the last meter is not a big issue, really. You'll figure that out. The question really is on the forward-going volume of sensors in your life, the tyranny of information overload and how to handle that. I was curious about, especially being a user interface expert, what do you think are the solutions there?
So let me, since I have this smart house that I'm talking about, and that the setup today of such a thing is very, very complicated. So a normal human being won't be able, to do something with this, just setting up the stuff, right? Is very difficult. So after that, digesting the information is what you're talking about. It is, I mean, incredibly difficult today because there isn't anything that is gathering all the information at one place, basically, and it makes sense with the context of the other. So the problem that we have today is that we have those silos. And so if you have the overload of information, it's because you have the overload of going to each silo, okay? And hopefully somewhere, somehow, it could be one of the services that we were talking about just now, could be something that is going to help to fusion all this information. It's something that makes sense for the user, that is going to kind of lower this information overload.
Yeah, so information overload is actually one of the biggest barriers, I think, to adoption in the healthcare space for this kind of technology, because physicians and clinicians, they'll say, oh no, I'm too busy, there's no way I can handle any more. But I think the key to get these technologies adopted is to go out there and really understand what it is that the questions people are asking, and then give them the answer to that question, no more, no less. Because there is so much that we could give people, and we're completely in the infancy of sensor devices today, because right now we're basically pouring at people everything that we can tell them. So you look at a lot of these quantified self devices that are out there, and you look at the websites, and you've got data upon data and graphs and charts and whatnot, and that's not really answering the questions that people have. And so for example, just to make this tangible and not just talking in the abstract, we were working on a product around caregiving, and we had early kind of prototype mock-ups of what information might look like, and we were giving people face heart rate and steps and all this stuff. And like we were showing these to people who are caring for their aging parents. And this one woman looked at me. She said, "Look, I just want to know if mom took her meds this morning and if she made her usual sandwich at 2 o'clock." Right? And so we then completely redesigned the interface to answer that question. And it ended up being a very successful information presentation because it answered the question people were asking. And so we have to be out there understanding the contexts of use and listening to what it is that people are asking for, and not then giving them everything, not then giving them numbers, but really synthesizing to what it is that nudges them and answers the questions.
Great. Next question.
Yes, my name's Brett Sargent. I'm with LumaSense Technology. So we're a sensors and analytic company, so we make our own sensors. So I feel the joy and the pain at the same time. You mentioned the deluge of data that comes from the sensors, and today in the marketplace we tend to shower customers with data. What are your thoughts on localized analytics, meaning at the sensor head analysis are done and you report by exception versus just sending massive amounts of data? Yeah,
you report by exception, or you just send whatever makes sense because you did already make some analysis, locally, and you are going to just extract the features, right? So this is definitely something that we have to think about. Just because if we were going to send all the data from all the sensors, all the time on the servers up there, there is no server with 100 billion or 1 trillion devices that are going to be able to get this data, right, for every single of us. So we need to think about doing some kind of analysis and analytics on the local devices themselves and at the sensor level. So definitely this is something that we all need to do.
Yeah, and I think people, like if you think about entrepreneurs and you think about people in general, like we're actually really well suited to solve this new problem that we're talking about now, which is too much data. And let me give you an analogy. Every day when, I mean, let's look pre-internet. You opened up a newspaper, you open up the Sunday Times. How many people in this room read everything in the Sunday Times? People sit down with it, you sit down with it, you have this dream that you're gonna sit down with it for 2 hours and go through it. And the reality is you sit down for 5 to 10 minutes over breakfast when you're not being interrupted by your kids or something else is going on, and you pick the things you're going to do. We're all really well suited to sorting through the noise right now. So when you solve these problems and you think about, okay, I have these sensors at the edge that they used to have a sampling rate of 60 hertz and now they're at 60 kilohertz, and I have this huge amount of data coming in. I mean, we're all pretty smart. I mean, that's why you look at the engineering problems and you think about what do I need to do, and then you go back to this really simple principle, which you were talking about, which is this idea that I just want to know if my mom took her medication this morning, and I want to know if she had her sandwich. And if you're trying to solve that, that's, for anybody that's trained as an engineer, it's about just trying to figure out how to do that. These are problems that we're incredibly well suited to solve. Anybody in this room, by just stepping back and thinking about it from a systems point of view, can sort through these things. It's not that, there's no magic to figuring this out.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks, Rob. Next question.
Yeah, my name is Jan Grotenbreg. I run a small marketing outfit for European companies. I want to bring in the topic of big data, which was one of the things that we talked about. We seem to be all very good in hardware and thinking, connecting things, but it seems to me one of the promises of big data is that we have this massive amounts of information and make something useful out of it, right? So the question really comes to mind, how to see how is that getting connected? How all these sensors out there are getting connected to big data? How do you get access to that? Who's owning the data, right? There's a lot of aspects in there, and maybe that also requires a new standardization. So it's something you can highlight on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a great question. Proteus actually has a data sciences team that's specifically focused on the big data, and I don't think anybody disagrees that there's huge opportunity in the aggregation of data that's being captured by this web of sensors that's out there. The challenge I think that we're facing as an industry right now, and it makes total logical sense why it is that we're facing this challenge, is that nobody wants to share their data or pull their data together because it is such an incredibly valuable and powerful thing, and we actually don't quite yet know exactly how it's going to be valuable and powerful. And so I think until we have some visibility into what it is that it's going to do for us, it's going to be hard to really break down some of those barriers and aggregate it in the way that might bring about truly new and interesting value.
Anybody else on that topic? All right, next question.
Okay, my name is Jnani Palanikumar. My question is regarding the lack of standards. Okay, so how can a consumer have an application which can control their fridge, TV, and dishwasher with the different vendors? Like I have a Samsung fridge and Sony TV. How can I have an application that controls both of them from my mobile app?
Yeah, I'm sorry to jump in. I would actually say, again, there's a lot of standards that are out there. There aren't a lot of open standards, but in terms of addressing these things, there are two major smartphone platforms that are out there today that anybody can sit down and figure out how to code and then deliver onto, I don't know, within a year, 2 billion devices around the world if you just write to Android and to iOS. I know I'm oversimplifying it, but really only a tiny bit. So I would argue that actually there's huge standardization that's out there today.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is that those devices that talk to something, already, right? So now the something has to be the place where we're going to mix that up and deliver back to the user something useful, because they are going to have an LG fridge and a Sony TV and a Samsung telephone. You know, they do not really talk between them today, but they talk to something, right? And again, if we now succeed to put something at the something level, so which is basically the cloud, we are going to be able to deliver back something to the user that is going to make sense. I call that the intelligence on the edge. So it means that the people that are going to want and to develop stuff because it exists today, because those standards exist today to communicate, the people from LG, for instance, if they want to go to talk to a Sony TV, they could by using the Sony API, right? So the intelligence on the edge is going to be intelligence at each device, you know. So we can definitely think that we could collectively gather some data and have people that are going to be smart enough to put them together in the cloud to deliver back on the specific device.
Okay. I think we have time for about 2 more questions.
Hi. Hi, my name is Dean Sirovica with Huawei. Coming back to something that Luke mentioned, that his sister, who's a normal person, and him, who's an advanced person, that everybody is going to become that way. He mentioned that his sister has 2 sensors, he has 150, so that's a factor of 70, and all these sensors talk to the person. What I wanted to ask about is, we're talking about sensors talking to people and being information being consumed by people. How about sensors talking between machine to machine, and only a very small percentage will end up going to the human? So if the panel can kind of comment on the ratio of sensors for human consumption versus sensors for machine-to-machine consumption.
So I think that it will be, actually, there will be some services that are going to use, you know, those machine-to-machine with no human intervention somehow, and you know, pipeline sensor and stuff like that. I mean, today there are basically those M2M, you know, applications. At the end of the day, even if there is no human intervention on those particular communications, it delivers back something to the human that needs to know about what happened, you know, there. So even if they are not part of the actual loop, of the feedback loop to a human, you know, themselves, the information that they carried up, you know, to the machine learning or to the analytics or something is going to be delivered back at one point to the human. Okay, so there is always somewhere an interface that we need to think about that is going to deliver back the information to us.
Yeah, I think the other thing is if you think about machine to machine, philosophically, that's already happened. It's already happened throughout the internet, everything you have. When you have a series of cookies in your browser and you go somewhere and you've been retargeted, it's because different things are talking to different things, querying different things. So in the virtual world, machine to machine is already huge. It's already a huge multiple of the transaction, or excuse me, of the interactions that humans have. So if you go and you buy something on a website, or you even go to a website, there's a pretty good chance you'll get targeted over and over. So there are machines, virtual servers all over the internet today that are talking to each other. So I think as you see more and more computation pushed out to the edge, this will just naturally happen where you have these devices doing these things. So, you know, I don't know exactly how you measure that, but by definition, that growth will be faster than the consumer-to-consumer interactions, or business to consumer, whichever X2X combination you want.
Okay, last question.
Hi, I'm Eric. I'm from Virgin Labs. So my question is, it's a 2-part question. First, in terms of, I see a huge amount of utility in terms of, cloud processed data from large sensor networks. Also, from a consumer perspective, signal processing and machine learning from data that comes from, say, like something like your watch that can detect steps forward as opposed to just like the raw signal data. But I think one of the more important things is really reducing the latency of the feedback loop for displaying the data to the consumer. So I'd like to ask, like, what do you guys think will be the ultimate fusion or convergence of that in terms of displaying the data and having the user interact with it in a way where they can understand it and process it And I'll even sort of throw a thesis in there. What do you see products like wearable glasses, smart glasses being one of those sort of central locations? And then the second part of the question is looking much further forward. What do you see as some of the new emerging technologies that will enable sort of even more transformational advancements, such as quantum dots and other new sensor technology that are coming to market?
There's a lot in there. We could have a panel around those topics. I think maybe just one thing that I want to address is I've heard kind of in some of these questions, there's a question of how much processing do you do at the edge? How much processing do you do in the cloud? And then how does it affect the user experience? Because you had latency of going from one place to another. Then you mix in battery power and life and kind of all this stuff. What's exciting about where we are now versus where we were 5 years ago, pre-iPhone, is that the rules and progression have become very predictable. So I have a much better idea how much a bit is going to cost me on an on my network connection than I did 5 years ago, because all the rules were changing all the time. You see different rate plans. You didn't know if the carriers were going to open up platforms. But now you can actually see a pretty steady progression of here's what the latency is likely to be like on this network. Here's what the processing power is apt to do on a smartphone. So as an entrepreneur or as a larger company, it's much more predictable how you make those trade-off decisions, because I can think about companies, say about 5, 10 years ago, they'd be looking at mobile, and we would spend endless hours in these startups trying to figure out how much do we do locally and how much do we do in the cloud per se. And you might make a decision that could arbitrarily change because the carriers change the rules in terms of how much bandwidth you are going to get that could turn your economic model upside down or your consumer experience model upside down. So I think that that's something that companies think about all the time, this user experience. How much do I cache? How much do I do locally? Everybody in this room is familiar with Instagram, I'm sure. Instagram, they know in the user experience when it is likely you're actually going to publish a photo. So even though you see that loading bar at the end, that loading bar is a trick, because once you get to a certain part with the filters, they go, okay, we know with a 90% or 95% probability, they're going to post this picture. So once they trigger that, we're going to start uploading it because we know 90% of the time they're going to post this picture. So there are tricks and things that people do all the time. It's a part of what user experience is about. And it's a really exciting field now, because at least the rules of the game are far more predictable than they used to be from a technology infrastructure point of view.
Yeah.
Just to add one word, I mean, the nice thing about what is happening now also is the fact that the CPU, power is becoming, bigger and bigger with smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. It means that we have the choice to decide where we're going to do the processing. We can do it anywhere at this point, almost anywhere. And we just need to be sure that when we design products, they are going to be possibly distributed anywhere. The CPU distribution, the computation distribution, has to be in our minds all the time.
Yeah, so just to build on that, I think the thing about feedback is we've got these very complex products that are now starting to enter the market from a user engagement perspective. And I think figuring out all of the different ways that you can provide feedback and really crafting these multi-touch point products that are giving you the information and the content you need in the way that is meaningful to you, right? Some people, all of us have mobile phones that we carry around. That's a great place to give you information. Some people need voice prompts. Some people need their loved one to call them and say, you have to do this. And so really understanding the breadth of touch points with which we can engage people and leveraging them is really going to get the feedback exactly where it needs to be at the moment that it needs to be there.
Thanks, Arna. Well, thank you, everybody. If I can ask everybody to remain seated, I think Karen's going to have some closing arguments. But thanks for being here today, and thanks to the panel.
No arguments from me. I'd like to thank our speakers for sharing your perspectives so freely. Really appreciate it. And Craig, for your thoughtful guidance of the conversation. As a humble token of our appreciation, we have for you the Churchill Club speaker T-shirt.
All right.
Please wear that in good health.
Thanks.
Yeah. No sensors, sand sensors at this point. Thanks again to Accenture for hosting this. Accenture has graciously provided validation for your parking. So be sure and pick a ticket up on your way out. This program will be available for viewing on our YouTube channel, Churchill Club's YouTube channel. And you have been a wonderful audience with great questions. Thank you so much, and see you next time.